This is a local story for me, but it's something that is affecting a lot of cities across the country. In fact, what I'm going to show you today, you may have already seen where you live. In Boston, there is this area called Mass and Cass. That is where Massachusetts Avenue and Mania Cass Boulevard intersect. So they call it Mass and Cass. For years now, it has kind of been known as Methadone Mile. Like, people have other nicknames for it. There are tent communities there in that section. But over time, I feel like it has increased, especially after the pandemic. When we did Tour for the Poor here in Boston, that's actually where we did it, because there's a lot of people out there. It basically looks like a mini Skid Row. Just keeping it real. Well, it's been a problem for years. Now, Mayor Michelle Wu is attempting to try to solve this problem. Now, she says she has a 3-step plan to fix what's happening at Mass and Cass in Boston. But first, I want to show you what is happening. I want you to see this for yourself. A lot of people look at Boston and they think of it as this beacon of academia, right? Tech's really big here. In fact, we're number 2 in startups after Silicon Valley. People kind of see it as this academic elite place. And yes, there is that presence here as well. But there's also a lot of poor people, and there's also a lot of people who are homeless. And the homelessness rate has continued to increase over the years, but in particular, after the pandemic, it increased the most since I have lived here. So what's happening at Mass and Cass? Let's take a look.
The mayor's plan starts with an ordinance allowing Boston police to remove tarps and tents from Mass and Cass, but only after offering a person shelter and other supports.
We're not trying to criminalize folks that are homeless.
Boston's police commissioner says this enforcement will get people the help they need.
We're going to pause here because I want to show you something. You see this? Let me go back just a little bit. This right here.
A person shelter and other support.
We're not trying to criminalize, folks that are homeless.
Boston's police commissioner.
You see this? See, this is the side of Boston that you don't see. When people come here as a tourist to Boston, the tour trolleys, the duck tours, all those little vehicles that you get on as a tourist here when you come to Boston, they're not going to take you to this part. This is the part that you will not see. This is the area next to Boston Medical Center, right? And for most people, they would probably be shocked to see this. If I showed this to most people and I said, what city do you think this is? Just a picture. Most people would not say Boston. But that's why I like to talk about these things, because I want to show you we have this issue here too. Let's continue.
Commissioner says this enforcement will get people the help they need while getting criminals off the streets.
Get them either away from the area, out of the city, or actually in the criminal justice system where some of them actually belong.
The plan also includes opening 30 transitional beds and services at 727 Mass Ave, providing brief stays as people move.
Okay, hold on to that thought, what they just said there. 30 beds, transitional beds, offering people brief stays as they will transition into more permanent residence. Hold that thought and hold that number 30 in your head, because I have something to say about that.
Into more permanent housing.
It's really not intended to be a revolving door or backfilling spots as a permanent location, but just to manage this very significant transition that will happen.
They have no idea and no plan for where they're going to go.
David Stone is the president of the Blackstone Franklin Square Neighborhood Association. They want to find solutions, but question what makes the mayor's plan this time different.
They already have existed at Mass and Cass, and they've turned out to be magnets for drug dealers, for property crime, and just general chaos.
He worries that crime will spill into the South End, but the police commissioner says there's a plan.
You see this? This is right here in Boston, guys. This is in Los Angeles. This is in San Francisco. This is in Baltimore. This is in New York. This is Boston, Massachusetts. And this is a part of Boston that you will never see if you come here as a tourist. This is the new mini Skid Row. Now, it's been here for a long time. Like, this has been an issue for a long time. For a long time. Through multiple mayors. We had this homelessness issue under Mayor Menino, who was mayor when I first moved here. I believe Mayor Menino was mayor for like over 20 years. So he'd been for a long time. Then he passed away. This was an issue under Mayor Marty Walsh, who now works for the Biden administration. And it's an issue under Mayor Michelle Wu. So it's not a new problem, but it has increased because they never solved the problem to begin with in the first place. Let's continue.
To prevent that.
I know people may be fearful that it's going to come to their neighborhood, but the reality is we are going to be in every neighborhood just to make sure that that doesn't occur.
Now, the president of the Neighborhood Association says they have started a petition and are collecting signatures asking the city council not to sign off on the mayor's new plan. The mayor says she plans to file that ordinance on Monday with plans to have it presented in front of the city council on Wednesday.
Okay. So now you're going to hear from Mayor Michelle Wu herself about this plan. I want you to hear what she has to say. But I want to bring up a point really quick. Notice there's no one speaking from the other side. Now, we did tour for the poor there. Everybody there is not on drugs. See, that's what they would have you believe. Not everyone there is. But you're not hearing from anyone on the other side. And the city, if you heard, the city council, they don't even want this plan to go through. They don't want to help these people. Now let's hear from Mayor Wu and listen to her break down the 3 steps that she has in reference for this.
Will give the police the authority to do that? I mean, effectively, this should do that?
So there are 3 components of what the city is doing.
3 components, right.
First is an ordinance that would directly empower the Boston Police to be part of removing the tents and tarps that have really shielded the violence, criminal activity, weapons, human trafficking, and much more that's been happening there. Second.
Okay, this is the same thing that happened in New York City where the police officers came in and they removed the tents from the homeless. Now, Mayor Wu is trying to do that same thing here in Boston in reference to mass and Cass. So you see how sometimes these mayors, they will actually see what's happening in other cities, what other mayors are doing in reference to an issue, and then try to implement it here. Let's go to step 2.
Second is to allow for the significant transition of the street in dispersing some of the crowds and really targeting that criminal activity by making sure that no one will be left without anywhere to go. And so we're creating some additional transitional beds and expanding shelter capacity in many of our shelters.
How many beds?
So we're looking to serve up to 30 people who will potentially be displaced from shutting down the tents on the street. Many, many more of the people there already have housing and are using the tents for other purposes.
Let me just explain something. As someone who has been there and has done tour for the poor there, and we were just there recently. Eric, my producer in the background, can tell you we were just there recently delivering food. And I'll tell you this. They need more than 30 beds, boo. They need more than 30 beds, and they need to be giving people homes, not beds. Do you see the way of thinking here? The bar is so low. We're going to offer them 30 transitional beds for temporary place of stay, and then they'll find a permanent residence. With what money? With what job? I know people that have professional jobs here in Boston that can't afford to move, that can't afford to go to another apartment. You got you need 3 months rent. You know how expensive rent is here in Boston? These transitional beds, if you look at how they've been implemented in other cities, they're not really working. The idea, they had these sheds in LA. JB and I covered this a while back. Los Angeles came up with this temporary housing thing where they created these little sheds for homeless people. The idea was they were supposed to come there temporarily and transition to a more permanent residence. Problem is, people weren't moving out fast enough. People weren't finding a permanent residence fast enough. So she's just basically doing what mayors of other cities have already done that's not working. If you look at a state like Mississippi, they handled their homelessness crisis. You know how they did that? They built them homes. Permanent housing, not temporary housing. Let's let her continue. I have some more to say.
And that part might be in anticipation of the next thing. 30 doesn't seem to be enough. I don't know what the number is. I don't know what the population is down there, but 30 doesn't seem to be enough.
I think it's hard to, if you're just kind of driving by and taking a quick look at what's happening, on your way to work or somewhere else, it can be hard to understand the dynamics and how it's different now compared to, let's say, 3 years ago or even a year and a half ago. On average.
Michelle Hun, I've been there multiple times. We've been there multiple times, giving out food to people. And even I can tell you, you need more than 30 beds. Either the city is being cheap or Michelle doesn't have a full grasp on the situation there. She hasn't been there as many times. Let's let her continue, and then I'm going to tell you how they could actually fix this problem.
There's about 200 to 230 people there during the day. A very, very much smaller number of those folks actually are in need of housing. Most everyone else has housing already, and there has been growing drug dealing and violent activity happening because we have built up the housing and services to serve people and get them into the right spots and move along the pathway to recovery. And so now it's time to make sure that all of our workforce is safe and that we're bringing it all together before it gets too cold and people are out on the street in winter.
But people are already out on the street, Michelle. So let me explain something here. This is a Band-Aid on a wound. They're not healing the wound. They're just putting a Band-Aid over it. I want to explain what I mean by that. These temporary 30 beds that people are supposed to stay at for I don't know how long, but it's not going to be long. And then they'll find permanent housing with what money again? If you're looking for just a studio apartment in Boston, you need at least, they said the average one bedroom's over $2,000. Let's say a studio, you find one for like $1,999, $1,999. Let's say you find that, right? You need 3 times that. 3 times that. Oh, and don't even think about public housing because they're going to tell you that's all full and there's like a 5-year waiting list. So don't even think about that. How could they fix this problem? Number one, they need to ask, what is the underlying issue? It's too damn expensive here. People are not making a living wage. We can get into the whole issue about the drug use as well, but the reality is this is a cost of living issue. 2, instead of finding temporary housing for these people, why don't you build permanent housing for them? Because I'm here to tell you, when 10 people leave, 20 more people will take their place. When they pull 10 tents away from Mass and Cass, 20 more people will take their place. They're not fixing the root cause of the issue. So what Michelle Wu and other city leaders could do is that they could actually just purchase an area of land and they can build permanent housing for the homeless. But they're not going to do that. And why won't they do that? They won't do that because these city officials, including Mayor Wu, are in bed with real estate investors. And the reality is, real estate investors don't want anything like that to happen. You can't build free housing for people because that will affect our bottom line. These officials are bought off. The housing issue, look, she jumped into this when she was running for mayor. She said this would be her big issue that she was going to tackle was the housing issue. Under her leadership, They've been privatizing housing in Boston, public housing, privatizing it. They make affordable housing that you have to have a certain income, be within a certain income bracket to even fit into the requirements to get into the affordable housing. And then the Section 8 housing, public housing, there's waiting list. So if you don't meet the requirement for either one of those, where do you go? You might end up out on the street. So if I was interviewing Mayor Wu, what I would ask her is, why not just build a permanent solution? Why not just build, this city has a lot of money. Why not just build a permanent solution for the homeless so that you don't have to have these transitional beds? And I'd like to hear her answer to that. I'm pretty sure she's not going to tell you, oh, well, because the politicians in this city, like many others, answers to real estate investors. Then you have to look at who creates the zoning laws. Why is it that you can only have affordable housing in certain zones? So this is a big part of the problem, guys. These investors have come in and they've purchased buildings, they've purchased areas and plots of land, and they already have agreement with people who are politicians like Mayor Wu, just like they did with Marty Walsh, and just like they did with Mayor Menino. And I'm here to say it. Under Marty Walsh, this was also a fucking issue. And he also said that he was going to try to fix this. Their response is always, we're going to make affordable housing. And the affordable housing, if you look at it online, most of the time it's not even affordable. I'm looking on the city website and I'm seeing apartments on there under affordable housing that are over $4,000 a month. So she's not fixing the problem. And I'm not saying they're not trying, like this isn't a plan. It's a plan, but it's not a permanent solution. I asked her about this. I asked her in person, what was she going to do? Also about the people that were being pushed out, the people being kicked out of their housing. Eric, if you find that video, let me know. We'll go back into this. I think it's on my channel somewhere. I'll try to find it. Hold on.
We talk so much about Mass and Cass. We dedicate a lot of time during a newscast to Mass and Cass. You must dedicate even, exponentially greater amount of time to Mass and Cass. But Atkinson Street and Southampton are also, is it fair to say they're also crisis zones? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, again, it's different than what it was.
Yeah.
Before I came into office, after the Long Island Bridge had come down in 2014, there had been hundreds of people living there for multiple years in a row in wooden structures that they had constructed because they had nowhere else to go, right. Propane tanks, no daily street cleaning. It was incredibly unsafe. The sanitation was an issue, and it was very, very dangerous. Since then, we have now provided hundreds of units of housing, helps people transition, and the tents that go up and down with daily street cleanings and everyone moving around and power washing the whole area. It's really made a big difference, but we need to ensure that safety is always present and that infrastructure can support returning the street to normal operations.
But again, not getting to the root cause of the issue. Everybody had a plan. She had a plan. Marty Walsh had a plan. Mayor Menino had a plan. Everybody had a plan in reference to this issue. But it has only increased. Things are still worse now. Now I'm going to show you this clip here because I did have a chance to talk to Michelle Wu in person. She was doing these neighborhood chats called neighborhood coffee chats or something like that. So if you haven't seen this, this is on my channel. This is when was this? This was a year ago. So it says stop at gentrification in progress. So let's go to this. Geez.
They're hoping to get by Pastor John Wheeler.
Stop. Sorry, I'm going to mute it. I'm just going to fast forward. There's John Wheeler to the part where I actually did talk to Mayor Wu. So like I said, they say all these good things, but then it's like when they get in, here we go. Okay, here we go.
City Councilor, thank you.
Mayor Wu, This is Pastor John Wheeler.
Hello.
We're just curious about the housing issue because like gentrification is increasing here, and we just see more and more people getting pushed out of the community, and we're just worried there's not going to be enough affordable housing. Are there any plans to build more affordable housing?
Yes. So we have a couple of funding streams that we're applying all that we can for affordable housing. So this year in the budget, $385 million going to affordable housing across the federal recovery funds.
Now let's pause there. Now she said $385 million going into affordable housing. Where is it? This was a year ago. Let's continue.
Operational budget and our capital budget, it's again some of what we need, and it's not about the dollar amount, it's about the impact, but that will really allow us to tie together all the programming around acquisition opportunity projects and keep renters in their homes. We have our rent stabilization committee going to work on legislation in the State House. We are trying to accelerate and prioritize affordable housing proposals so they can move faster through the approvals process, and then actively working to create a lot, thousands more units of housing.
We're mainly from Bromley Heath, over right across here, and we have Bromley Hall, the place where the Black Panthers serve the first free breakfast program, and the lunch program. We have many memories in that place, and they're planning on demolishing that building. And we understand that the neighborhood and the buildings. But as far as Bromley Hall, we've had funerals there. We've had marriages there. We had the first radio station in this neighborhood that's still upstairs called WTMC.
Sorry.
Pastor John Wheeler.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you. I would love to continue the conversation.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to continue that conversation.
Notice Michelle Wu is not the one responding to him. That's her assistant who's actually saying, I would like to continue the conversation. That's politician talk for we're done here. Because you call these people's offices to try to continue this conversation and it never happens. And yes, Terry is right. Deval Patrick had a plan. Everybody had a plan. Everybody had a plan, but nothing is solved because of investors. That's why these things don't change. I'm gonna go to some of the comments here, but I told you how they could solve the problem. Thank you, Roger. Police commish said, lock him up. Hammer sees nail. Outside Steelers fan said, last time I was in Boston, I thought it was clean all over. A lot of people think that. Yeah, that's the part you don't see. Thank you, David. Have you ever seen George Carlin's take on homelessness? He argued that if there is enough money to be made to solve it, rich people would be all over it. There you go. That's a good point. Thank you, Cool Blue. Imagine the leaders perform surgery. Bandage. Thank you, Will. Can't get Section 8 with a felony. Bad policy. There you go. Oh, and also there's another one. Remember Joe Biden was trying to make that rule that if you smoked weed in Section 8 housing, you couldn't stay there, even in states where it's legal. It's legal here in Massachusetts, for example. Thank you, Cool Blue. Don't all households earn $250K plus in annual income? No. No.